With the 990 Duke R, KTM is once again raising the bar and sending the Duke R into the race with 7 horsepower more than the standard version. We are here in Spain today and we're gonna take a closer look at KTM's latest naked bike here. Stay tuned. As we know it from KTM, they now released an R version of their 990 Duke. The standard version had 123 horsepower, and here with the R we now have 130 horsepower available and 103 Newton meters of torque. That should ensure plenty of forward drive. We basically already know the engine from the RCR 990, the super sport motorcycle with the same parallel twin cylinder that we find here. And there it also delivers 130 horsepower. Let us maybe briefly look at the facts again before we dive into the details. As we already said, the 990 engine with exactly 947 cubic centimeters of displacement has enough potential for the vehicle to really push forward properly. So in direct comparison, we have about 7 horsepower more in the engine here. The displacement has remained the same compared to the regular Duke. The weight is around 190 kilograms ready to ride. That is on a similar level to the standard version. What has changed, however, are some things in the suspension. We have the 48 Apex fork from WP at the front and the Apex shock at the rear, which is mounted slightly differently. The linkage is designed a bit differently. As a result, the bike is 15 millimeters taller, which also provides more ground clearance to allow for greater lean angles without touching down too early. Especially when it comes to the racetrack, that is always an advantage. The knee angle does not change, which is important to know. The entire vehicle is raised, which increases the seat height to 840 millimeters, but of course the foot pegs are raised by the same amount. And that is why the knee angle while sitting does not really change. The tire size is also similar to the standard Duke with 120 at the front and 180 at the rear. No changes there. We have the Michelin Power Cup here, which usually performs quite well on the road. More on that later when we talk about the riding characteristics of the motorcycle. For the brakes, we have really good components from Brembo. At the front, 320 millimeter discs with a proper diameter and a radial pump also from Brembo. That should ensure strong deceleration. Of course, cornering ABS is also on board, which can be adjusted or partially deactivated in stages via the electronics. That means we can either have full ABS intervention or reduced algorithms that, for example, allow the rear wheel to lift and still intervene in the system. That definitely makes sense for those who want it a bit sportier and maybe want to slide a bit into corners. That gives a lot of freedom without having to completely give up ABS. That is a great feature you always like to see. In terms of electronics, we also find a similar level of development as in the RCR. We have quite a few new features installed here. First of all, let us start with the display. It is now what you could call a cinema format display, very wide but quite low in height. That gives you a large display area without making the front of the motorcycle unnecessarily tall. And that is very pleasant because it also includes a touch function. So when navigating through the menu structure, you do not have to struggle only with buttons, but you can directly touch the display and select the desired menu item. That even works with gloves, which is obviously very important. Especially when you are on the road and usually wearing gloves, it is always annoying if you have to take them off first. They did a good job here and included this option. The display is 8.8 inches, a color TFT, and visually it offers many possibilities, especially when it comes to readability in sunlight like today. The contrast is well chosen and therefore easy to read. Since we are already talking about electronics, we should also briefly discuss the rider aids and additional features. Of course, everything that is possible nowadays is included, from traction control to launch control to quick shifter functions. everything is basically there. However, it should be noted that this is usually not fully included as standard, but must be purchased in packages. For the first 1,500 kilometers, all electronics are usually unlocked, and after that you have to decide what you want to keep using, and then you can buy them either in packages or individually. There is the track package and the tech package. The track package, for example, includes the Quick Shifter Plus, which allows both upshifting and downshifting. There is also engine slip control, which prevents rear wheel hopping when downshifting by reducing engine braking. The tech package also includes cruise control and various custom modes that allow you to store different base settings that can be quickly accessed on the right side while riding. On the other hand, we also have the track package. As the name suggests, it focuses on features mainly intended for the racetrack. For example, there's a dedicated track ride mode. It gives a more direct throttle response and allows a lot of power to be released without requiring a large twist of the throttle. Even if you do not fully twist the throttle, you can still access close to 100% of the power. There is also adjustable anti-wheelie control with 5 levels. That is very useful on the racetrack where you accelerate hard and want to unleash as much power as possible. If the wheelie control intervenes too early, you cannot achieve the acceleration you want. That is why it is a nice feature to have when you want to fully use the power in acceleration zones. Launch control is also included in the track package. Traction control with 10 adjustable levels is also ideal. On the left side, we have 2 toggle switches that can be easily operated with the thumb and index finger, allowing adjustments to traction control in 10 steps while riding. There is also a lap timer, which is always a nice feature for track use. However, it still has to be operated manually. What I have not mentioned yet is that the display includes a built-in GPS module. It also allows the screen to be split into different sections. That means you can display navigation and vehicle data simultaneously. Thanks to the wide display layout, there is enough space to show all the information comfortably. With the touch function, you can adjust how much space each section takes. With the integrated GPS module, you can also use navigation without a connected phone. You just need to load the map data once via Wi-Fi, and then the system uses its own GPS. Unfortunately, it does not work together with the lap timer yet. That is a bit hard to understand because with GPS, it should be possible to set a trigger point on the track for automatic lap timing. Maybe KTM will update this in the future. As for the costs, the track package costs 500 euros and the tech package around 1,000 euros, which includes the track package. It is a bit complicated, so check the website for details. Nowadays, these features are not included as standard but must be paid for separately. However, this allows you to choose what you actually need. Let us talk about the riding impressions. Today I rode here in Spain on beautiful roads and really got to experience what the bike can do. Starting with the engine, I really like it. It delivers good power from low revs and runs smoothly. With 2 cylinder engines, it's not granted that you can open the throttle at 2000 revolutions per minute without introducing chain slapping, but here on the 990 Duke that works exceptionally well. The engine runs smoothly even at low revs and does not produce many vibrations. Even at higher revs, it remains relatively calm, which makes long rides more comfortable. At higher revs, it still pulls well, although not like a 4-cylinder. Around 10,000 revolutions per minute, you notice the limit, but the usable rev range is large. Compared to a V-twin, it has a slightly different character, but still offers advantages like a slim design. Thanks to the compact engine, the bike feels narrow and allows good knee grip on the tank, making riding comfortable. Shifting works well, including the quick shifter, although it is a bit rough at times. It always works, but especially under partial load, it can feel a bit harsh. Now let's talk about ergonomics. I have to say, I really like the ergonomics overall. I am about 1.80 meter tall, and when I place myself on the bike, you can actually see that the knee angle is not all that extreme. It is definitely on the sporty side for a naked bike like this, but still comfortable enough even for longer tours. You can also see that despite my long legs, I still have enough room around the tank and can find a good position here. The reach to the handlebar, if we take a look at that, is also quite easy and pretty much effortless. I have a fairly pleasant, almost upright seating position, but I am still leaning a little bit forward. Because of that, the sporty character definitely does not get lost, and I find it relatively easy to tip the bike into lean or let it fall into the corner. Under hard braking, I can still brace myself well toward the front, and when it comes to acceleration, I can still bring my weight far enough forward to generate a lot of drive without the bike immediately wanting to rise up. And if we are already talking about ergonomics and riding behavior, then of course the suspension is always an important point. The basic setup has been done very well. They have found a really good compromise between sportiness and still retaining comfort. With this suspension, you have the ability to ride over very rough stretches of road with a relatively high degree of comfort, and at the same time, when you really start loading up the suspension by riding very sportily and quickly through corners, it is a lot of fun because there is not unnecessary movement going on. You get a lot of feedback, and that shows that the basic geometry of the bike is really quite balanced here. Especially with the Dukes from the earlier generations, you often had to deal with a lot of nervousness. Particularly at low speeds, like in roundabouts, when you wanted to explore the limit a little bit, that used to be difficult in the past. That has become clearly better here. The geometry has been softened a little and made more conservative. We now have a trail of 100 millimeters, and in the past that was sometimes even shorter. And because of that, we now get a bit more feedback and more stability. Even at high speeds and under heavy load and also under acceleration, we have a relatively calm front end, and the bike never becomes nervous, which of course is also helped by the tires fitted here. The only thing is that in slow corners up to around 30 to 40 kilometers per hour, you can feel that the bike wants to tip into the corner. There you just have to hold it slightly against that tendency in order to maintain your radius. But that disappears once you get to cornering speeds of around 40 to 50. Then the bike becomes very calm and precise and can really focus nicely on the line. With this relatively sporty suspension setup, that gives you the possibility to ride the thing really fast. And with the adjustment options that we have in the suspension, we also have the possibility to move a little more in the direction of comfort, or then make it sportier again, for example, when heading onto the racetrack. We already touched on it earlier and talked a lot about the electronics. And of course, I also had a look at those now while actually riding. All the rider aids on this bike work exceptionally well. We have a very broad adjustment range. If we start with traction control, probably one of the most important points when it comes to rider aids, then thanks to these unlocked modes where we can fine-tune everything, we have a very wide range that can be covered. From very cautious intervention levels, you can be extremely safe in very poor conditions. Then you really notice drastically how the bike barely releases any more power while leaned over, and in that way it creates a big safety buffer that you can make use of. If you want it sportier, then you can dial the levels back down all the way to 1, and then the thing really does release power even at deep lean angles. And despite the traction control still being active, there is a lot of performance available. That was not always the case with traction control systems from the earlier generations. Here it really works very well. Wheelie control is also available in different levels, although when I am out riding, I personally really like to have that opened up, meaning deactivated. And on this bike, you can do that, which is one of the most important points if you really want to have a lot of fun riding it. The same applies to the ABS. The ABS works really well in terms of intervention, and especially when you switch off the rear wheel detection, as we said earlier, because you can deactivate that in different stages. Then you also have the possibility to really slide into the corner while still having the comfort of ABS on the front wheel available. And I like that very much. That means you are always on the safe side when it comes to the front wheel, which is the more delicate system on the motorcycle, so to speak. And at the rear, you still have the possibility to play around a bit. That combination is very good, and especially on a bike like this, which is so much fun on the road. I really like having something like that available. The navigation also works quite well. I have to say the processor behind it is not exactly the fastest, especially before setting off. When I tried entering the coordinates and everything for where we wanted to go, you could tell it simply takes a bit of time whenever you input something. You are not allowed to type too quickly because otherwise the system gets confused. So you have to make one input, maybe wait 1 or 2 seconds, then it accepts it, and then you can continue. So it is not exactly the quickest thing out there, but in return, it is incredibly comfortable. The way the navigation system presents the information to the rider is really well done. On the one hand, you can see the route and the road you are planning to ride very clearly. And in addition, there are turn instructions lightly overlaid at the top, so that works well. And when things become a bit trickier, you can actually just tap on the display. The split between the navigation section and the engine data section can simply be dragged across and moved, and you can zoom the navigation section in a little bit, and that is really a great feature. This touch function also works really well despite wearing gloves. It saves you for the most part from having to hop through the menus with the switches here, because I can usually select things directly, and in my opinion that adds a very big comfort factor, because while riding you can quickly change or select things without much hassle. Maybe just a quick word on the brakes as well. We already heard that there are proper Brembo components fitted here, and the functionality is really very good too. You can definitely speak of very good controllability. I never had the feeling that I was over braking the front wheel. It is not too aggressive, but when you really grab the lever with intent, you can feel that there is extreme deceleration happening. And together with a relatively good ABS control algorithm, that results in really strong braking performance and also a lot of confidence when it comes to slowing the bike down quickly or in a very short distance. So yes, maybe one more short conclusion. Today I spent about half a day riding here near Barcelona on the mountain roads, and I have to say I really like the bike. Thanks to the engine, which pulls really well already from low revs, we always have enough power available. In the first 2 gears, the front wheel keeps lifting continuously, provided you deactivate the wheelie control. And for road riding, I have to say that is more than enough, even though a motorcycle like a Super Duke, of course, adds quite a bit more on top. But for roads this tight, you really do not need much more power. With 130 horsepower and 103 Newton meters, you are actually very well set up. The refinement of the engine is also generally quite good, with a few small compromises when it comes to the functionality of the quick shifter. Even though it did work functionally, it still feels a bit mechanical and bony. What I really like, and what is a bit of a novelty in this segment, is the electronics. Thanks to the display with the touch function, it is incredibly easy to use, even without having to spend a lot of time figuring things out. Very intuitively, like on a tablet, you have the possibility to simply select the different functions here. And yes, lively it definitely is, and there is also a certain amount of stability there. So there is really nothing standing in the way of having a lot of fun with it on the road. And one thing we should perhaps still pass on to you is, what about the pricing? We already talked about the tech and track packages, but what does the whole bike cost? If you want to buy it straight from the showroom, the 990 Duke R costs 16,399 euros in Austria, including all necessary taxes, and the bike costs 14,985 euros in Germany. Yes, I hope I was able to bring the bike a little closer to you with this. I would suggest that if you get the opportunity, just try it out for yourself. It is definitely worth it, and I would be happy if we see each other again soon in one or another test review. I am signing off here from sunny Spain and will soon be heading back on the road to cold Austria. And all that is left for me to say is bye and take care until next time.